This is the Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neil Kieran.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Analysis in Chains. Today's interview is with Abhishek Pitti from Nucleus Vision. Abby, thank you for joining us today. Can I call you Abby?
Yes, Nathan, thank you so much for having me, and good morning, everyone.
Abhishek, tell us a little bit about Nucleus Vision. It looks very interesting. It's a blockchain project that deals with retail stores. Tell us a little bit about the project.
Sure, Nathan. I think the easiest way to explain a Nucleus Vision is to imagine that you go into a physical store today and nobody knows you until you probably give out your loyalty card at the time you're checking out. And imagine if you have not done any transaction, nobody knows you at all. Nobody knows that you were even there, for example. Now, let's say you walk into a Nike store, and what if somebody comes and greets you saying, hey, Nathan, welcome back to the store, remembers what your purchase history was, and tells, hey, we have an exclusive this promotion for you, and how special do you feel? I mean, have you had that experience before? And if you did, that typically happens in a place where you are either very, very loyal to, or either a place that you have made friends with the sales associate. But we are trying to create that experience globally in all retail physical stores, which is essentially called personalization. And we are trying to create that intelligence that can be shared with the places that the consumers want to have that experiences in, whether it's a retail store, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a bank, whether it's a hotel, a resort. The idea is to create that next generation physical store experience for customers, as I described earlier.
Okay, so I walk into a hotel or I walk into a store and I sort of get the VIP experience. Hi, how are you doing? They recognize me instantly. How would something like that work?
So we use a new generation technology, which is a combination of blockchain and IoT. When I say IoT, it is called Internet of Things technology, which really works as a sensor technology in the store. Now, when a consumer, or let's say in this case you, walk into the Nike store, the sensor interacts with the radio signal of your cell phone and puts that data on the blockchain. When I say blockchain, it's basically a technology that takes your data in a very secured, encrypted format and basically interacts with, let's say, Nike in this case, to tell Nike saying, hey, Nathan walked in, he wants to share your information, he wants to share his information with you to get this experience, and this is what Nathan has purchased from you before, and if you offer Nathan a promotion based on his engagement with the brand, for example, if you are a regular customer with Nike would like to give you a special experience. And that experience can be in different forms. But our system intelligently not just tells Nike that you're there because you chose to tell Nike that you're there. Number two, it tells, intelligence about your preferences to Nike. And then in real time, give recommendations to Nike that they can offer to you in the store to make you get a better experience.
That was actually going to be my first question that you already answered. So this is an opt-in experience, not sort of like an opt-out experience.
Opt-in experience.
Okay, so it's not like I would just walk in the store and then Nike would access my, data that's been scraped from my credit card or something. And no, this is something I would say, no, I want this. I want to be recognized when I walk in stores by certain people or by certain brands in order to get this VIP experience.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes even better. It gets even better. Like you can choose which locations you want to have experience in, which locations you don't want to have experience in. You can completely turn off and then you're off the grid if you choose to.
That's interesting. So I have a question though. Why blockchain? Why do you need blockchain for this? Couldn't you solve the same problem with a regular database and a sensor?
That is a very good question, and the reason why that is a very good question is because traditionally the information has already been existing in the ecosystem, and the problem has been that a lot of these big conglomerates, data owners, didn't participate in the system. For example, the banks, credit card companies, telecoms, third-party apps, a lot of people hold on to the customer information and they are not sharing that information to give customer a better experience. It's because there is no trust in the system. The customer doesn't trust the people who own the data. The owners don't trust anybody else because there is no customer consent in the system. So what blockchain essentially does, it creates an auditable record of all the transactions of data that are happening with the consent of the customer on the blockchain. So now, if I am, let's say, Angry Birds, and if I want to share Nathan's information or sell Nathan's information to Nike, and Nike would reward, obviously, Angry Birds and Nathan for making that sale happen, then this entire transaction with the customer consent is stored on the blockchain as a record. So the customer can audit it, the Nike can audit it, the Angry Birds can audit it, that this transaction happened with the consent of the customer. And that's why the new trust that comes in with the blockchain and the security comes with the blockchain enables a lot of people to participate in the system without a second thought. And the second thing why blockchain and the token is the micropayments that can be enabled automatically with smart contracts makes it very different than using a fiat currency, where you can only go down to 1 cent, nothing below that, right? So, so if you want to go further down in microtransactions, you can only do it through a cryptocurrency.
So if you're doing really microtransactions, should I assume that you're building your own blockchain, or are you building on a different platform like Ethereum?
So we are at the moment using Ethereum blockchain to do our solution. We are basically considering Ethereum at the moment to go out and use Ethereum blockchain to deploy our solution.
And how are the fees and the gas prices affecting your business model, or do you think that'll be solved when Ethereum moves to more of a proof of stake model?
Yeah, I think that is one of the major concerns while we choose a particular blockchain. Our current decision was based on the fact that the maturity, ecosystem, and community of a blockchain to go out and get to the market quickly. At the same time, the gas prices and the transaction speed and the cost are certainly a concern for the long term. I think for the first 100,000 stores, we will be fine. But post that, we will have to consider the development of Ethereum blockchain and also evaluate some of the side chains projects, some of the ecosystems of blockchains that are coming up, whether they have a better cost structure or business model when it comes to blockchains. I can give you some examples. There is a bunch of other solutions in the market. We spoke to IOTA, we spoke to Qdom, we spoke to a bunch of others.
Lisk?
We spoke to ARC. So we are definitely evaluating a bunch of blockchains for the post 100,000 stores, which is almost a year out.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. I think for anyone who's considering doing their own token sale or their own ICO, or their own projects, these are the questions that they're going to have to consider. I'm going through this process myself for my own startup and sort of thinking through, okay, well, what are the factors that affect each one? And definitely going forward, the scaling problem is going to become more relevant.
Yeah, congratulations on your startup to start with. And yeah, absolutely, I agree with you.
I want to go back briefly to something you said before about the use of blockchain and why you chose it. So, as I understand it, the main benefit of blockchain is the transparency that it offers to people to see, okay, who's purchased my data, and what the transactions are between, say, Angry Birds and Nike, right?
Yeah, so transparency and the auditable nature of the blockchain, right? Like it's irrefutable. You cannot change it. You cannot amend it going forward once the transaction is recorded. So everybody, all parties involved, always know that they can always go back and review the history of transactions.
So I'm curious, who owns the data then? Like when I walk into a store, if I opt into Nucleus Vision and I go into a store, is the data that you're matching with mine, is it owned by Nike or by Angry Birds, or is it something that sits on my wallet and then I share all of that data with whoever I walk into, or is it found on like the web from a conglomeration of my social media accounts, or how does it work?
Yeah, so at all times the consumer owns the data. Now, the current scenario is that the consumer doesn't even know where their data lies. Their data is literally everywhere, right? Like you shop at retailers have your data. You use a phone bill, telecom has your data. You use a credit card, the credit card company has your data. So currently, the user doesn't even know where the data is. And what we do is we are trying to bring all of the data back. Step one is to secure all of that data for the consumer and bring it back to the consumer on their phone. So number one step is secure all the consumer data. Number two is give control to the consumer, which is then you have the control whether you want to share that information or you don't want to share that information. And number three is now when you go into these physical stores, you have the ability to monetize it, get the benefit of it, get an experience out of it, or you choose to stay out. So you have the ability to monetize it on your own, which you don't. So the idea is to give control back to the consumer for securing it, controlling it, and monetizing it.
This sounds similar to someone we had on the show a few months ago, Data Wallet. Are you guys familiar with them, or are you in contact?
I know Data Wallet, and we share a couple of same partners, in the ICO process. I have basically, met the team briefly, but also I believe they are great data partners with us in different geographies. The biggest differentiation between us and data wallets is we have this IoT, agenda to create relevant context and use that data in relevance. So, I can do all the data gathering I want, but if I cannot use it in the relevance of when you are in the store, it doesn't create the experience in the store. And we are trying to revolutionize the future of retail. If that's the agenda, then we want to know when you're in the store, and that's where the IoT part comes in.
One thing I've always found interesting about these type of projects is that it gives sovereignty back to the consumer, and I find that really interesting. But on the other hand, I've always had in the back of my mind, do consumers, or do the majority of consumers, want that sovereignty, or would they rather just not think about or not know that that their data is out there? What have you encountered? Are your adopters a specific segment that is really interested in monetizing this data, or are you finding that people who may not have even been aware of how much of their data is out there are starting to cotton on to this idea of, oh, now I have a new asset that I can share?
So I would answer this question in 3 points. Point number one is there is a paradox to the consumer behavior and how people interpret data privacy. We all are kind of victims of that, right? We use all these different tools in exchange of our privacy, our data, and all these tools go and monetize our information and behind our backs, but we still continue to use those tools. And I don't believe I have to name any of them. But the consumer behavior is we always have traded our privacy in exchange of convenience and communication. And that is a very paradoxical, thing that you notice when you look at the research. And that's what we have noticed as a general behavior. Now, number two is the second element is whether consumers are concerned about the privacy. The answer is absolutely yes. Whether am I concerned? Yes. Are you concerned? Yes. The challenge has been the convenience of getting control, which has not been the case. I mean, it's not very convenient for me to go to everybody, get my data, put it in one system and create, a solution that I can share it with other people. And third, I think the agenda is if we can give control to people with an easier tool to manage and a secure tool to manage, they would absolutely would want to do that. It's just that the systems don't exist at the moment to do that.
We've talked a little bit about how different industries have been reacting to blockchain on this show. And you're the first company that I've talked to that really is in depth with the retail industry. Have you found that retailers have been really excited for blockchain solutions and emerging technology, or are they a little more reticent to get involved with that?
To be very honest, I mean, retailer has traditionally been very slow in technology adoption. Because fundamentally, that's not their business. Their business is to do merchandising, build great products, have great consumer experience. So anytime you build something for them that can create the customer experience, they love it. And unfortunately, if you go back, I mean, I was just doing research. How old is physical retail? It's 11,000 years old. And
really? And that's crazy.
That number is like, yeah, it is crazy, right? And if you go back, even then, there is no toolkit to give customer intelligence to the retailers in real time, where they can actually personalize experience like you're going to your grocery store around the corner, like back in time. But and blockchain currently enables all of that. I mean, the IoT and blockchain marriage sort of enables that. And that's what, in my mind, is super exciting for the retailers. And now coming to your question about what, the consumers are reacting to it. In our observation in the last 3 to 4 months, we are seeing conversion rates as high as 71% for the offers we have given to people in real time in the stores when they walk in. And that is just beyond any benchmarks that we have seen so far. So we have a great experience that we are able to deliver to consumers in the store, and the retailers are excited to get that toolkit.
I don't doubt it. I mean, when you were telling your business model and the value you're delivering there, it makes sense that someone who is greeted when they go in the store personally, where the retailer knows their preferences. Yeah, it makes sense to me that, I came in and you know my preferences, and here you're offering me something that I want, that they would have a high conversion rate. But I guess what I was thinking of is that for the retailers themselves, even though it's a benefit, the cost to them is that they would have to change their business processes, a lot of them. And I'm wondering how are they reacting to that? Are they going like, ooh, what is this blockchain? Or, we totally want to change our business processes. Is it mostly like, I don't know, big retailers that are converting and trying this out, piloting this, or are you finding small retailers are also willing?
So again, 2 points in that regard. One is the Nucleus Vision approach is, we have gotten inspiration from Apple about how a full stack solution always delivers a great experience. And what I mean by that is we are building the entire solution for the retailers. So all they have to do is plug and play, where everything is pretty much automated for the retailers, and all they have to do is click literally three buttons to actually adopt and start the Nucleus Vision experience in the stores. So one is the entire plug and play nature, because we are not depending on the retailers to do something, significant to adopt the solution. I think that is a bad expectation anyway, because these retailers are not technologists, and not many retailers also have complex systems or teams to manage that requirement. Number one. Number two is, I think it varies from retailer to retailer. I mean, there are some retailers who are far more efficient. They have robust processes, and there are some retailers who have, like the other extreme is, they don't even have a proper POS system in the store, right? So you have to sort of understand, number one, the advancement of these retailers that you're dealing with, and second is the vertical you're dealing with. The grocery experience is very different from a Starkling experience of Louis Vuitton store, right? So it all depends what the use case will be in the vertical you're dealing with.
So I guess what you're saying is that the retailers don't actually have to buy Ether in order to use your system?
No, it's automatically done in the system for them, and we facilitate it for them.
Is that something that you think is going to be important for others that follow in your footsteps, that try to approach the retail market to make it sort of seamless for the retailers?
Yeah, I think the only three-word principle that we have for retail industry to do with anything to do with technology is simplicity, simplicity, and simplicity. I mean, there is no other solution to that. If you cannot dumb it down, they will not use it. I mean, at some point, it would be like you would always go back in the circles and say, we are giving you so much value, why aren't you using it? The idea is, if you cannot make it simple for them to use it, they will not use it.
Yeah, no, that was what I would expect. I mean, when you were saying things about transactions, microtransactions between customer and brand, between brand and brand, my first thought is, geez, do these guys have to buy crypto? Like, I can't imagine. I have trouble imagining the small grocery store buying crypto at all.
The system we are building will take care of it. That's the whole idea. I mean, we have to, like I said, bring it down to 3 buttons that anybody can do it. I mean, to make it simple for the retailers, of course.
Now, I'm wondering, how vulnerable is a business model like yours to spikes in Ether price? Does it really not matter that much, or are the payments that retailers pay dependent on something like the Ether price?
Well, just to clarify, we are using our own cryptocurrency called nCash, which is a ERC20 token. So technically speaking, the nCash is, somewhat tied up to the ERC20 platform. Now, how dependent are we? I would say not that much, because we are creating a system where it actually only work backwards, where the system will only benefit the ERC20 versus the other way, in our case, because our token system is independent of what ERC20 does, because our token demand of nCash is basically a separate allocation than ERC20 allocation, like the Ethereum allocation. And, the retailers buy the nCash tokens in the system to purchase data or to know the identity of the customer. But at the same time, we are not directly related to Ethereum, but versus we use a cryptocurrency called nCash in the system.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to ask a little bit about your process of how you got started. You've got quite a robust team with, you have Tim Draper as an investor. Like, you've got, 9 people on the team there. How did you get started? And for what advice would you give other blockchain startups who are sort of at the beginning stages founding their team?
Well, I think the biggest advice as far as team is, people who are starting out as startups, you need to have complementary skill sets. If you have more than one co-founder, if you are the same skill sets, then you're not adding any more value except for adding a body. So I would recommend completely, if you want a sustainable partnership for people who are starting out, they should have completely complementary skill sets so that you are creating more value together. And number one is always find strategic partners who you can align with, whether they're investors, whether they are customers. The more strategic in nature they are, the better for the business. And finally, when you're, I would always say hire slow, fire fast, which is the golden rule in recruiting. So if you be very cognizant of who you bring on board versus, if people are not, sticking to the values of the company, you have to be very agile in moving fast, and because the culture gets affected. So these will be the 3 pointers. There's a lot to talk, obviously, but these will be my initial 3 thoughts on recruiting.
No, for sure. I think what I was asking is more along the lines of how did you meet like your CTO or your, your first team? Like how did you get this group together, and what was the tipping point maybe for convincing other people that you were the pony to bet on?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think, I was starting out from Harvard Business School in Boston, doing research in retail, trying to figure out the next generation experience that would be like the convergence of online and offline retail. I think the biggest resource have been that I come from the technology background, and I had a network of people that I could reach out to find people in retail as well as in technology. But more importantly, I think at some point you need to have a vision that you can share with people and people are getting excited about. In our case, I think we had a pain point, we had a technology. To answer your question, I come from a technology background. I'm an aerospace engineer. Worked in General Dynamics for almost 6 years. I only hung out with engineers. I'm a nerd. I have a friend circle. LinkedIn, I think, was a great place to find some of the people I work with today. Some people I know I've gone to school with. Some people I know that I've worked with on previous projects. So, broadly speaking, I literally have found people from my previous companies, from social networks, as well as LinkedIn. Overall.
Yeah. I have another question that's a little bit separate topic, but close to my heart. I noticed that you have your MBA, your Harvard MBA. There has been, especially in the startup community at large, sort of a negative view of the MBA in my experience. Have you found that the MBA has helped you, or has it sort of had a negative viewpoint from the people that you've been networking with? I
mean, it's interesting how the stereotypes actually follow, because I'm glad I dropped out, to be honest. I think people typically start the same way. I mean, people definitely for I don't know what reasons, the stereotype typical reasons have thought of me as an MBA, and until they found out that I dropped out, and then they think I did the right way. But I don't know whether it had made any difference on my skill set before and after the fact. I think. In fact, even till today, some of my investors think of me as a more business mind, where I come from probably the most technical, fields in technology. I was literally a lead for the wing section of the G7 aircraft. So I'm just curious, why the stereotype has taken such a wind, but it definitely follows for sure.
I think it's from the 80s, to be honest. I actually have my MBA as well, and this is why this is an interesting question for me.
I agree with you. That stereotype is definitely out there, especially in the Valley.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Wolf of Wall Street sort of idea comes with the MBA. I mean, personally, I found it helped me a lot, but I mean, it's not for everyone for sure. But no, it's interesting. Okay, so what are the next steps for you? What will we expect in Q1 and Q2 of 2018?
So Q1, I think Q1, Q2, we have a lot of partnerships planned. We are still in the tail end of our ICO process. We will be making some major announcements in the next few weeks for our community. I mean, we have a great community. We love them all. I think these guys have been extraordinary support for us on Telegram through our whitelisting. So we are still going through that process of completing the entire agenda on the main sale, as well as going forward to start interacting with some of the community members. Number two is we have a great scale plan for the technology into several retailers and geographies, locally in India as well as overseas in different geographies. So we have a great roadmap going ahead. We will be announcing a bunch of new partnerships coming in the coming weeks. And we're looking forward to it. I think it's really exciting. Go ahead.
It sounds like you guys are on a good road. Good luck, Abhishek Pitti. Thank you for joining me. Nucleus Vision is the company. And thank you. It's a one to watch. We expect good things from you going forward.
Nathan, thank you so much for having us. I'm definitely excited to be here. And again, the audience, if there's anything you need to know more about blockchains, ICOs, feel free to reach out. Happy to be of any help. Thank you so much.
Party at Abhishek's house next week. Big info session. Okay.
Nathan.
Bye for now.
Cheers. Thank you.